Good morning, good afternoon from Terry here at Renaissance. Welcome to our webinar today. We're just starting a few minutes early just so we can get people joining us today. Thank you so much for joining us. I think it's afternoon where you are. I'm joining from the UK, so I am freshly woken this morning. So welcome to you today. I'm just going to go through some housekeeping slides with you. So do take a look on your screen. And while we're doing that, do tell us in the chat where you're joining us from today. We will be starting in just a couple of minutes. We will just start promptly. But just for the moment, take a look at your screen. As you'll notice, you will be muted on arrival. But if you do have any sort of technical issues, do take a look at the settings. You'll find them in the bottom left-hand corner. Today, we are going to be using some functionalities that you can interact with. Please use the Q&A for any questions so we can manage them effectively. And in the chat box, please make sure your setting is defaulted to everyone. Please make sure that you can see your messages. And do tell us, like I said, where you're joining us from today. As I said, I'm Terry, the event manager for Renaissance and Geo Education. And you can pop anything in the chat that you'd like to discuss. Use that chat and make sure your setting is changed to everyone. And as I said, if you have a question, please make sure you pop that in the Q&A box and we'll be catching some of those questions at the end. I just wanted to quickly share an upcoming webinar we've got coming. This has just been added yesterday, so do take a look at that. There's a link to the QR code there for registering, and so you can book on the registration form, and do take a look at the QR code that takes you straight to Zoom so you can register. And just if you need them, here is a couple of URL websites you can catch up on all our events that change daily here. So do take a look at those. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen while my colleague starts sharing hers. We will be starting just a minute's time. And I think we're now at 9 o'clock, so I'm going to now hand you over, or 9 o'clock UK time, 12 o'clock your time, guys. I'm going to hand you over to our presenters for today, Hasna and Katrina.
Thank you so much, Terry. Okay. Thank you for the introduction, Terry. I just want to further highlight that the session is recorded. So if anyone has missed the introduction or perhaps the links that were shared, please don't worry. This recording will be shared with you. You can have access to that later on. And again, just to highlight, if you have got any questions, we will be trying to keep an eye on the chat throughout the session. If not, we'll certainly address any of your questions at the end. Please use your Q&A function. And again, just let us know where you're joining us from. Really excited to have you all here. Over to you, Katrina.
Hi, thank you for that, Hasna. Welcome, everyone. We always start with our mission statement here at Renaissance, which is to accelerate learning for all children and adults of all ability levels and ethnic and social backgrounds worldwide. And that definitely speaks to today's webinar. So my name's Katrina. I am a product specialist here at Renaissance, working mostly with the products we're going to talk about today. So CLS, which is Star, AR and myON. And we're joined by my colleague Hasna. Hasna, if you'd like to tell us a little bit about you.
Brilliant, absolutely. So I am a former primary school teacher, having taught 12 years in the UK, and my specialism is English as an additional language, EAL, as well as modern foreign language teaching and learning. So my role here at Renaissance is that I am an education advisor. So you are absolutely in good hands between Katrina and myself. What I'd love to know is a little bit more about your role. So please just use this opportunity as a moment to just type in the chat, test it out for yourselves and see if it's working, and let us know what your role is. And we'll begin by really just talking about what we're hoping that you'll get from today's session. In support of the UAE's Year of the Family, we are going to explore today hi there. We're going to explore how schools can strengthen those home ties, those homeschool connections to help you boost your reading development. So some of you joining us might be teachers, some of you might be part of the SLT teams. Do share that with us. But today's session really is designed for educators using any part of our Renaissance Complete Literacy solution. This might be new to you all. Brilliant. I've got a principal in the room. Fantastic. And some of you might be using only one of those products. So certainly you'll hear about how that complete literacy solution can help support you in supporting your parents. Quite a lot to cover today, but certainly we will talk about how CLS supports literacy at school as well as home. We'll look at how you can use data to effectively have conversations with schools. But I'm just going to dive straight in. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to pop those in. Now, what we can see is that the Year of the Family in the UAE highlights something we already know, but we don't always pause to reflect on just due to time constraints. And that's just how the family is at the heart of your child's education. School plays, as we know, an essential role, but it's really within the family that values are formed, confidence is built, and a love of learning begins. The Year of the Family in the UAE is more than a theme, and it is a national commitment to really strengthening the role of families as the foundation of education, well-being, and social cohesion. Now, as educators and parents, we do share that powerful responsibility, shaping not only the academic success, but values, the resilience, and really identity in our children and students. Today, we're going to explore how families and schools can work together to support children in that rapidly changing world. We all know it's changing rapidly for every one of us, not just our students, while really staying rooted in Emirati and shared values. Now, research consistently shows that children really do better academically, socially, and emotionally when families are actively involved in their learning. In the UAE and Middle East, this is especially important. Our students are growing up in a multicultural and digital world. And strong family connections help children stay grounded in their identity, their values, and their sense of belonging. Today, you'll probably feel that parents are no longer just supporting education from the sidelines. They are partners in learning. This doesn't mean doing their child's homework. It just means creating an environment at home that really encourages curiosity, routine, and emotional safety. The Year of the Family also reminds us that education is about more than the academic success. As I mentioned, families are the first place that children learn respect, responsibility, kindness, and perseverance. When children feel supported at home, they are better equipped to manage stress, navigate challenges, and build healthy relationships, both in school and beyond. So, as parents and educators, one powerful question we can ask ourselves really is, what values am I modeling in my everyday? One key question that always comes up is, how can parents support learning at home, especially when time is very limited and confidence may vary? Well, this is exactly where our complete literacy solution comes into place. It really is our approach designed to support teachers, to support parents, and not to overwhelm them. Literacy is the foundation of all learning. So when families are feeling that little bit more empowered to support reading, writing, and communication at home, children can make faster and more meaningful progress. The solution, as we'll find out in just a moment, I am going to hand over. I don't want to be sat here talking at you the whole time. I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Katrina, who will go into the site and talk a little bit more about that complete literacy solution. But it does provide clear, structured literacy pathways so parents know what their child is learning and why it matters. It provides practical, home-friendly activities that fit naturally into our daily routines, not extra pressure or homework battles. Last but not least, guidance for parents, helping them to support literacy, even if English or Arabic is not their first language. Importantly, the solution strengthens that homeschool connections, and parents are not left guessing. They are given the tools, the language, and confidence to support their child's literacy journey. So in the spirit of the Year of the Family, our goal is really simple: to help families spend quality time in learning, building stronger literacy skills, also while strengthening relationships. So over to you, Kat, with our literacy loop.
Thank you for that, Hasna. So here at Renaissance, we have come up with the learning loop, and we think the complete literacy solution absolutely talks to that learning loop of assessing students. The assess part in the CLS solution is that STAR reading assessment. It is an adaptive assessment, quite a quick assessment. around 20 minutes to complete. From that, teachers will understand where students are in their learning journey. They can adapt their teaching using myON. So myON is a digital library of books, very much to be used alongside Accelerated Reader, but where schools are going to get real value from myON is when they're using it as a teaching tool, and Hasna's going to show you how that can be used with EAL learners a little bit later in the webinar. And then accelerate that learning. We know quite often when students are learning to read, they can read words in isolation. Are they necessarily putting them together to make that comprehension? And that's where the Accelerated Reader closes that loop, because it's just building on that foundation and reinforcing, testing them. Are they comprehending what they're reading? What can the teacher do? And it is that complete loop, and it is that it's not a one and done assessment. We recommend assessing students 4 times a year. So we're celebrating small wins because they will make rapid progress, and then adapting, and then carrying on accelerating. So for there, it's pretty much what I've just said there. It is on one platform, so all of their solutions, they can do their assessment, they can do their practice, and they can do their quizzing all on one platform without having to jump from site to site. You will get the slides after this, and there is a really lovely video. Please do watch that, about that CLS in action in the UAE. Lovely little video, just again, so you understand that it is having a major effect on student outcome. So the idea is students will take that star reading assessment, robust assessment, but quite quick to administer. They'll do their reading and quizzing, and it's that continuous. So not a one and done. And there's lots of tools built within that platform to support parents at home. One of the sites that I'm going to start with is Bookfinder. Bookfinder, if you haven't experienced it, if you haven't shared it with your parents, absolutely do explore. When I was in school, I was a librarian. This was my go-to. I was on this site every single day. You don't need any credentials to sign into Bookfinder. It is just a public website, but it's great for parents to see, because children may well have lots of books at home that will be on Accelerated Reader that they can quiz on. And again, even my students thought they couldn't read the books from home and then quiz on them because, you know, I hadn't put a sticky label on to say it had a quiz. If they've got books at home, brilliant, absolutely be utilising those books. And I was going to say, if they've got books in their own language, if they can search for the English title and it's got a quiz, there's nothing to stop them taking the quizzes on those books, because it is testing their comprehension. I'm just going to jump to a different website. So I'm going to start off with AR Bookfinder. So as I said, it is a public website. You can just, into your search engines, put in AR Bookfinder, and it will come up with a site like this. You don't need any credentials, and you can do a quick search on a book. So I'm just going to go for the BFG. And it tells you if that book has a quiz. It will tell you what the book level is. It will tell you the age that that book is suitable for, and it will tell you the points value. So all of our books have been through a computer system called ATOS. And what ATOS does is looks at the difficulty of the words, the sentence structure, the length of the paragraphs, and the total number of words in a book, and gives it a difficulty rating based on that criteria. Because it doesn't look at the theme of the book, all of our books also have an interest level to make sure that you're not exposing your students to inappropriate topics that they're not quite ready to deal with. And again, really useful just as librarians, as educators, by the best will in the world, you can't read every single book. This one will give you a little bit of a blurb and will give you some guidance on that age appropriateness. And then every book also has a points value. The points value is determined by the total number of words in the book. The higher the number of the words, the higher the points that are available. And the idea is once students have taken that STAR assessment, teachers can set reading practice targets, which are a combination of the result from the STAR test, how many days are in your term, and reading for a minimum of 15 minutes. Each student will get an individualised target to work towards. And it's an even playing field because it's differentiated. So your less able students will have a lower target to achieve. Your more able students will have a much higher target to achieve. Students achieve the points by taking the quiz once they have finished reading the book. The pass rate for most quizzes is 60%. So students will be rewarded for being able to comprehend over half of what they've read. The aspirational pass rate, so you as teachers know that they're getting that real quality of reading, is 85. So when we're talking about tracking, I'll talk a little bit more about that aspirational pass rate. But this is a really useful site. And again, if you've got those hard to reach students that will tell you they don't enjoy reading, I mean, they maybe just haven't found the right book. A useful one is using the advanced search. So students can search by interest level, which gives you that appropriate age. So if we go for middle years, and I'll just go for between a 3 and a 4. So they can put in their ZPD, which they will find on their STAR test, and they can search on that criteria. So it's given me 3,732 books that hit that criteria. Too many for a student to be looking through. So we're talking about the year of the family. So let's look at some books that deal with family life. So we've got those books, so it narrows that search down to 642. And what students can do is put together a little wish list simply by clicking add to my AR book back. So they can build up a profile of the kind of books that they might enjoy. And that's really useful for the librarian to know what kind of books might be missing in the library, but also when they're coming in and saying they don't like to read, it gives the librarian that starting point. So a really useful website. And if you haven't already introduced that to your parents, definitely use that. Hasna and I were talking before the beginning of the webinar, and we were talking when we were in school, how did we get the parents involved with supporting their children with using our products. So in my school, I had an after school session where we invited the parents to come along. We called it bedtime stories. We invited the children to bring their cuddly toys with them, so their little stuffies. The parents came along. Some of them actually came along in their pajamas, and I modelled reading a story with the parents and the children, and then the parents and the children all took a quiz on the book that I had modelled, and then we gave the parents time to ask questions and search for books and think of ways they could support. We also put on some hot chocolate and some cookies, which maybe entice them to come along. Hasna, you done it slightly different in your school?
Absolutely, that's a lovely story, and I think that's a wonderful example of what schools can do. Use that as an idea, and I'm sure that everyone here has at some point thought about how they can engage their parents and bring them into school. We ran breakfast mornings, so for 30 minutes, 3 days, we had one session that solely spoke about Accelerated Reader for our parents and how they can utilize Accelerated Reader from home. We ran a separate breakfast morning the following week where we focused on our STAR assessments, and it really was about 30 minutes where we brought them in, shared some coffee and biscuits. And then the third session, so it was 3 consecutive weeks, where we then followed up with myON. And it was a very similar picture as yourself, Katrina. We shared a book, we demonstrated the book, we actually set out for parents to have their own iPads and take part as if they were in their children's lessons. So again, you guys are the experts. Please share your ideas with us. We love to hear how you use your products to engage your parents. So what I have done, Katrina, just before you move on to the next part, is that I have included the AR Bookfinder link into the webinar chat. So if you haven't had a chance to click into that, please do so now and just have that open on the side for you to revisit at the end of the session. Thank you, Katrina.
Thank you. So what I'm going to do now is have a little bit of a dive into the RGP site and talk about the different elements and maybe think about some of those reports that might be useful to share with your teacher, your parents. So I'm going to log on first as an administrator.
And in fact, as you're logging in, Katrina, I'm just keeping an eye out. There are no questions so far, which is an indication that's all been really clear. But if anyone can just pop in the chat, just so we can find out a little bit more about perhaps which product you are using. There will be a poll at the end as well. But it's always interesting to know because it helps us to guide the directions throughout the conversation in the direction that it needs to go in throughout the session. So please utilize the chat just to let us know if you are using any of the products, if not all of them. Thank you.
Perfect, and thank you for that. And that's it. You may be using 1, 2, or all 3 products together. We always say better together because they do really fit that learning loop. But I'm going to cover all 3 products. So if you're using one or the other, there's still going to be some benefit for you today. So RGP site, I'm going to start in reports and we're going to start with that STAR assessment. So as I said, we do recommend 4 times a year. I know some schools do use it more frequently, so they're testing every half term, giving them 6 assessment points. Entirely up to you. I would say as long as you're doing 3 a year, you're going to have enough data. Love this view because it lets you see all the different reports. So if you are struggling and can't remember what the report looks like, it gives you that little bit of a visual clue. So one of the ones that really informs you as teachers, where are my students reading, is the STAR summary report. I've selected all my classes. I've also selected do not group. You might do it by class, so you might only be looking at one class, but I'm going to have a big report. You'll get a report that will look like this. It will tell you how long the student has taken to complete their assessment. It will rank them by their scaled score. It will show you the scaled score. And then for some students, if they're in year 2 or above, it will give you their percentile rank. For students in years 2 to 5, it will also include an estimated oral reading fluency to show how many words a minute that student can comprehend. And the one that we're really going to focus down on is the ZPD. ZPD is the zone of proximal development, or their reading range. It's going to let you know the books that are going to be completely accessible and those at the top end that are going to provide that challenge. And ideally, we want the students to be picking freely from within that range, obviously with a little bit of guidance. At the very bottom end, they can pick any length of book to read, and when they come to do the quiz, they'll be quite successful. If they're determined to go right to the top end, encourage them to keep it shorter, because at that top end there's going to be lots of new vocabulary introduced. You don't want that reading stamina to impact how well they're enjoying that book because they're being bombarded by lots of new words. If I click on ZPD, what it does is order it. So you can see the whole variation of ability in the class. And again, helps you determine have the books or do the books in your classroom fit the needs of your students. So good for you to just check what are the abilities of the students in my class. If we go,
tell us a little bit more about the ZPDs, Katrina, just in terms of how they function and where they come from.
so the ZPD is, say the word for me, I could.
Zone of proximal development.
No, not that one. Whose theory was it?
It was Lev Vygotsky.
Vygotsky. I could never pronounce it. Lev Vygotsky. I always think it's Zev Vygotsky. Lev Vygotsky.
Yeah,
thank you. So it's based on Lev Vygotsky's theory that at any point they can check where students, or anybody's actually, I'll say students, where their peak learning is. And that's what that ZPD is, that peak point for the biggest impact on growth. And remember, that is a guide. And as long as students are picking from that ZPD or their reading range, for 60% of the time, you will definitely see growth. But one of the reports that you might find useful, I've pinned it at the top of mine, but it is found right at the bottom one. It's parents and other reports. So if you haven't discovered this, do explore. So there's a STAR parent report, which will give them an overview of their child's performance. There's a STAR family report. It's basically telling them the same information, but with a little bit of visualization. And it's got a little bit about the learning progression. And then you've got your STAR student report. That is obviously one you've done more than one assessment. And once you've done 3 assessments, it will actually plot that learning line. I really like this report because what it will give you is that SGP, or your student growth percentile. Let me see if I can get that one to run for you actually. I'm not sure if it'll run on my demo site, just purely because I'm using demo data and there might not be enough. Yes, it is.
And actually, am I right in thinking, Katrina, that if you click the question mark at the top, you can see a visual of what the actual report will generate, like, just in the event that you are unsure, just to highlight that we've got those help files as well.
Perfect. This one is what I really like because it will tell them where they are. It will tell them the ZPD, and it will tell you how the growth is going. So SGP is the student growth percentile, and it's showing you relative growth. So for English as additional language students, I think that's a real key metric, because it's not comparing your students in the same class, because we know that they may well be very mixed ability. What it does is look at their initial their initial scaled score, and looks for other students in their year group born in the same month and compares their growth against those students. So a real key metric for your students. It will show you the 2 assessment or 3 assessment if there is, and then it will plot on here and let you see visually if that growth is low, typical, or high. And you can see Kirsty's is right at the end at that very top level. So a nice visual report. It might be something useful when you're talking to parents in parents' evening to have this up and talk to parents about their child's progress. I am going to jump really, really quickly to accelerated reader. So ultimately what we want that assessment, because that's key for that foundation. Where are your students? But how to push them on. We want them reading and we want them quizzing. Accelerated reader, if you click on it from the front page, it will take you directly to record books and targets. And this is where you can set targets based on, some schools use half-termly, some schools like a full term, entirely up to you. So this term I'm looking at for my students is from the 6th of January up until the 14th of February. So quite a short 6-week term. And even if I just look at the first 2 students under points target, you can see George, his target this term is to score 7.1 points, but Kirsty, a more able student, her target is to score 11 points. So it is based on the student's ability, making it that even playing field that every single child can succeed. This is really useful for teachers to track. Under reading targets, it tells you that 58% of this term has already passed. So for students to be on track, they should be on 58% of their points target. If I click points target once, it will take to the top the students that haven't quizzed just in this term. So there's a few students that might be reading a longer book, but it just gives me that information. So, and it doesn't need to take long. It could be when George is coming into the class, you could say, oh, George, how are you getting on with that book that you're reading? So that quick conversation, and George might say, oh, I finished it last night. Brilliant. Can you quiz? Paul, how are you getting on with your book? I didn't like the book. Okay, have we picked another book? No. Right, go and pick another book. So you're having those quick conversations. It's not impacting you necessarily. If I click again, what it does is take to the top the students that are reading the most. So if we look at David here, David's points target this term was 3.6. David's actually scored 11.8. He's well above his target, and it tells me as a teacher that his target is exceeded. Now, as teachers, you can go in and you can change individual targets if you wish to. Always do it in a conversation with students. Don't move the goalposts without having that conversation. What else can I see from here? So he's got the green, and that's what you want to see. And ideally, you want to see 3 greens. Where I talked about that aspirational target is 85. So students will be rewarded for passing their quizzes at 60, 70, 80, but so you know that they're fully understanding what they're reading and they're having that real quality of reading. You'd rather see them at 85 because our research shows that is where the biggest growth happens. David's not a million miles off of it. So not too much to worry about. Is there any other indications about why that might look like that? And if I come over here, it tells me that 96% of David's books this term have been above his ZPD. You can see his ZPD here is 2.6 to 3.6. If I click on the student's name, it tells you the level of books that he's read. He's read a 4, he's read a 6, and a 3.6. So 2 of them are way above the top end of his ZPD. One of them is at the top end, and 1 he failed completely. Actually, if you look at the 3 he passed, there's nothing wrong with his quizzing. The only thing letting him down is he had a little bit of a blip. That might be a conversation with the student. So with the quizzing part, ideally you want the students to be quizzing within 24 to 48 hours after completing reading that book. So the book is completely fresh in their mind, and you know it's their comprehension that's being tested. If students are leaving it longer than that, you're relying on memory. And it may well be that this one, he's quizzing from memory. And as teachers, you've got the option to go in and deactivate it. And it could be that they've clicked on the wrong book and don't know how to stop it. It could be, oh, they thought they would have a go. You can deactivate it. So just nice and simple for you on there. If I go into reports on here, at the very, very bottom, parent reports. So parent reports, you've got the practice parent reports and you've got Home Connect. With Home Connect, parents can register up to 7 email addresses. So if the parents maybe don't live together, they've got extended family like grandparents, they can register up to 7 email addresses. And every time the student takes a quiz, the parents will receive an email to let them know that is happening. You as a school can opt if that Home Connect includes quizzes only or quizzes and their assessment. And that, I would say, think carefully about parents being informed via email about assessments. Again, you know your parents, is that something that they would like, or is that something, a conversation you would rather have in person? So the reports are there.
And I think I'm sure you'll agree with me, Katrina, that really this data is really about how it becomes a conversation rather than just having key reports.
Oh, absolutely.
Sharing data, reading data with families is always a great starting point, but really just framing it in a way of explaining their children's progress quite simply and positively, as we'll see later on down the line. But that's one key takeaway from me, is really how that data becomes more of a conversation later on down the line. So thank you, Kat.
Perfect. And that's it. And you wouldn't, again, don't be really sending out some of these emails or reports until you've had that conversation with parents, because them receiving that without any context isn't going to mean a whole lot to them. So thanks for reminding me on that, Hasna.
Pleasure.
So this time I've logged in as a student, and you can see the student view is ever so slightly different. You can see their practice tools here, and you can see their assessment. I'm on a demo site, so I've got more than one assessment. Your students will only see the assessments that they have access to. Students want to take a quiz on Accelerated Reader. It will look like this, so they can search by title, author, quiz number, or keyword. It will give them books on myON that they can read, which will be linked to their ZPD. So these will all be within the student ZPD. If the student ZPD is higher than or includes 3.6, they will see articles. And you'll think, why is there only one article? The only article that we recommend that David accesses at the moment is this one. It is the only one that is within his ZPD. So it isn't a glitch. It is actually right. There is only one article at 3.6. If your students aren't reading at that level, they won't see that recommendation. It does give them the ZPD. So I don't know if you're using reading logs in school. And I know when I first started using Accelerated Reader over 20 years ago, I probably cut down a small forest giving my students paper reading logs. This absolutely takes the need for reading logs away, because it's given them that ZPD. And I know, being in school, students will ask you 50 times a day, what's my reading range? Remind them it's on there when they log in. Also, if they click on to progress and click over to my completed work, they have ever quizzed on. Again, really useful when they hand you a random book and say, have I read this book? I don't know, but if you look on your my completed work, it will show you if you've done that book. So really, really useful to remind students of that.
And can I also ask, Katrina, and again, this is based on our recommendations in terms of our students accessing their platform from home. One of the key things is how we can really support and foster that independent reading that's taking place. We do say you can set limits to dates and times that students can log into their platforms from home, but it certainly helps with that student ownership and motivation. Is there anything else you'd like to add to that, Katrina, in terms of what we'd recommend for students accessing the platform from home with their parents?
Absolutely. So pre-COVID, our guidance was always the quizzing takes place in school. That way you have control over who's taking the quiz. When COVID happened and the world went mad, obviously we relaxed that rule, and some schools found it beneficial. Some found that parents were very, very competitive and were taking quizzes. And interestingly, I did have a call with a school from the UAE, and we were looking at the data for a student in year 5. Student in year 5 was quizzing on books by Stephen King. The child had not read them. The parents were taking the quiz. So what I would say is, you know your parents, fiercely competitive and take quizzes for their children. And if that answer is probably, then I would say lock it down and I can quickly nip back on and show you how to do that lockdown or sites, or Hasna, if you want to do it when I hand over to you, that's absolutely fine.
And that's lovely because actually, the idea is making parents partners, not just observers. And I think something that was suggested to us was actually if parents really are that enthusiastic, which is great, let's get the parents reading with their children, is come up with some sort of agreement, where you say to your parents, how about, we'll come to a bit of a compromise. You choose one book every term that you read and you actually complete the quiz, but highlight to us what that text was. So I guess that's one strategy that we use to sort of create some limitations without removing the platform use for them at home. So that's one idea. But, we do welcome that shared reading experience between parents and students as well. But certainly just to highlight there that you do not have to allow your students or children to access the platform from home if that's going to be causing any other difficulties or challenges.
Perfect, thank you. And just while I'm logged in as a student, I just want to show you how you can put the onus on the child to track their own progress. So if we look at David, this top line here is looking at this term. So from the 6th of January to the 14th of February, where the purple line stops is today, reading for 15 minutes. And then underneath, you can see his points target this term with 3.6. We can see he smashed it and it tells him there, awesome, you've gone above your target, keep up the great work. If you're tracking day by day with your students, ideally you want the rocket and that purple line to be parallel. That will let you know they're hitting that 15 minutes minimum reading time, and it will always give your students guidance. So if I was logged on as a child that hadn't done a quiz, it will say something like, you can do it, pick a book and begin reading. So there will always be guidance. And then underneath, it's tracking. So it's saying he's below his 85%, but it's also saying you're doing a great job. And then it tells him that he's passed 3 quizzes and he's read 80,000 words. Just on that word count, and particularly if setting targets is going to be new to you, when you set targets, it's only showing the words read this term. And I know in school, new term, my students would have a meltdown saying, somebody has stolen my words. Nobody stole your words. Go back to the full academic year and you can see all of those words come back. And then very, very quickly, I'm going to click on myON and just show you it from this student and how it all links together. And then Hasna's going to have a little bit of a deeper dive into myON. So when I click on myON as a student, I will have, where is it? Did I pass it? Oh, books in your ZPD. So this is linked directly to the result of their STAR test. So it will give students recommended books at their level. If you're using it with students that haven't done an assessment, but it will be based on their year group. So the books are age appropriate. One of the things I would just like to quantify here is I'm using a demo site. So you'll see titles on here that you won't have on your myON. So don't panic if you're looking at things and think that's wholly inappropriate for my students. Your site will look very, very different. On here, it will also give them books that have had open before. It will give them recommended by the teacher. So as teachers, you know your students, you might spot a book on myON and you can recommend it and it will appear on their front page. He's clearly read some books on legends previously, so it's building up recommendations on previous books. It's given them unexplained mysteries, some non-fiction suggestions, books popular in the year, and fiction. It doesn't limit students reading there. So students can use the browse function and it breaks it down by genre. And this is my favourite way to search. So students have got a nice visual clue as to what those books are about and they can begin searching for books there. The one thing about myON, yes, you've got that recommended books within your range. It doesn't stop them accessing books from anywhere on myON. And the good thing about myON is because it's got the guided audio, or for about 90% of the books, it does allow those children to read books at a higher level than they can read independently. So I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to hand you over to Hasna, who's going to have a little bit of a deeper dive and show you
Brilliant.
some of those features.
So I'm going to actually ask you to leave that open for me, please, Kat, if
All
that's
right.
okay. Just I'm conscious of time, and actually we are welcoming you to attend later sessions where we are going to talk about those individual products later on. But mostly today is really thinking about supporting those bilingual learners. Quite often they come from families who English isn't a first language. And what we do know about our bilingual students is they bring that rich language skills, background, knowledge, and experiences into our classrooms. And sometimes traditional assessments don't always capture that. Whereas with our complete literacy solution, you'll find that when it's used intentionally, it does help us to build that focus on growth, access, and confidence rather than just the deficits in the students. Kat, you've spoken beautifully about STAR being that adaptive assessment, which means that it adjusts to the students as they respond, which is particularly important for our bilingual learners because it reduces that frustration and language overload, which is important. We can identify the student's instructional reading level, again, allowing us to have those conversations with our parents, helping to set the scene in terms of what the next steps are. We can share the vocabulary development with them as well as their comprehension skills. But for bilingual students, this data really helps us mostly to distinguish between a reading difficulty and language acquisition. One important reminder is just something that I thought about earlier on, is that the STAR scores, that scaled score that Katrina, you mentioned, should never just be viewed in isolation. As trends over time tell us much more of an accurate picture, which is why we recommend those at least 4 testing times over the academic year. We use it to guide instruction and not to label students as such. You also mentioned about accelerated reader, supporting that independent reading while checking for comprehension. The quizzes are really not about how fast a student can read, and sometimes that could be the competitive element that parents bring into it. How many books can they read? Why are they not reading enough books? It's really about how well they understand what they read. So for our bilingual speakers, our bilingual learners, accelerated reader works best when it's paired with intentional support. We really need to get the whole school's buy-in. We need to bring parents into as many conversations as we can. So we move on from it just being a tool to being more about building those relationships and links with our parents. And then moving on to myON, being that powerful tool for access and engagement. Yes, as you've demonstrated, Katrina, it offers that large digital library with adjustable reading levels, books that are designed to meet the challenge that the student needs, with an extra audio support, which we'll demonstrate in just a moment, if that's okay, Kat. These features are incredibly helpful for the bilingual learners, and particularly if they are reading at home with their families, they've got that language being modelled. Students can listen to and read the text at the same time as they build that background knowledge even before lessons. So actually that is a great opportunity where you can assign specific books for students to read at home with their parents on the myON platform prior to them starting a particular topic or a theme and so on. Excuse me. That practice of reading independently without fear of judgment or without fear of making mistakes in front of peers. Let them practice reading that book at home to their parents. It does help us create, I suppose, that low pressure environment where bilingual readers and students can build that vocabulary, fluency, and confidence at their own pace. And I'm sure you'll probably all agree, if you have used CLS, the Complete Literacy Solution, is that it creates a really strong support system that helps build on those skills and confidence. So that being said, Katrina, could we just use a couple of minutes just demonstrating a book? So if you can just choose one of your book favorites or one that you'd like to share in terms of how they could potentially use that at home with their families, that'd be wonderful.
Perfect. So I've looked at a book on sharks. So this on myON, about 70% of the books are non-fiction, and we know when students are learning, it's important that they are accessing fiction and non-fiction, and that is another really great way that myON can support students with outside interest as well. And to support your topic teaching within school. So when students find a book that they like, you can see it is Sharon Hasna, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Oh, perfect. When they click on it, it gives you a drop-down menu. Students can open the book, so dive straight in. They can take the AR quiz. It might seem like the obvious. Ask them to read the book first. And I say that on every session I do, because I have had students just, oh, take the quiz. Oh, I know everything about sharks. You might, but not pertinent to that book. So always encourage them to use that. If they click the heart, it will appear at the top under their favourites to be read later. And if they click on info, it's like taking the physical book off the shelf. It will give them a little bit of a blurb. It will tell them how long that guided audio is. It will tell them the age rating that's recommended for that book. It will also tell them their ATOS level. So remember, ATOS is a computer system that levels our books for accelerated reader. So if their ZPD was 2 to 3, this book would fit perfectly within there. And it tells you it's worth half a point. So let's dive in and open. So with myON, all the books that are on myON are available as physical books. If the physical book is in full colour, the myON book will also be in full colour. Students can press play. Do you hear that?
News alert.
So at the beginning, there on the title page, there will always be some music that will entice them in, and it does link to the themes. So if they were reading about unicorns, the music might be slightly more upbeat. Students can't just press play and disappear and pretend to read. They do need to interact with the book. So,
a taste for everything. Night comes. A tiger shark swims up from deep water.
I'm just going to pause there. So as well as having that guided audio, what you can see is it's highlighting each word and then highlighting each sentence. So again, another bit of scaffolding for your EAL students. Another great thing that students can do is if they click on this cog, it's their settings, and they can slow that audio right down. So again, it's setting that pace for the students and meeting them where they are. So I've selected that slower audio.
It catches the first fish it sees.
So again, for those EAL learners, it's slowing that text down. A great way just to show your students how far they've come is you can see that it's a record function. So if you have 30 children in your class, there is no way you can get round to hear them read individually. Get them to record themselves reading a book from within their range. And then it allows you as a teacher to come back and listen to those recordings in slow time. And I do say that very flippantly. I know as teachers, we never have any slow time. But a great way, particularly for your EAL students, when they are making such rapid growth with their reading, it's difficult for them to see that rapid growth. So having that recording at the very beginning of their journey, doing it every time you've done an assessment, get that recording. So you've got that progression just as that evidence that this was how you used to read and look how far you've come. So really, really useful. Because students are going to be able to read books at a higher level than they can read independently, they might come across words that they're unfamiliar with. If they click on a word, they can view it in the dictionary and it will give them the definition. So again, it might be something that you're working on in school. You may be working on vocabulary. Students all have a journal. And for your students, it may well be you want to build up a dictionary of new words.
I love that. And I actually think, why not use the record feature when reading with the parents? Get the parents to record themselves reading with their children. Absolutely, why not?
Absolutely. And I was going to say, because some of your parents will also be English as an additional language. So it's a great tool for them to be practicing alongside. And it could be that the parents are recording for their child. So the
Absolutely.
child can be listening back to their parents.
And again, I mean, that's a very quick snapshot of the powers of myON within that CLS programs. But however, I do just want to spend the last couple of minutes or so just really highlighting again, not just the features, but ways that we can celebrate. So if we can just go back to the PowerPoint, please, Katrina.
Yeah.
And the idea is that celebration and success in reading isn't just about that reading, reaching an age-related expectation. It's about making those meaningful progress, building that confidence, and developing a love for reading at home. So one of the most powerful ways that CLS supports celebration is through the pupils' progress, through that ZPD that we spoke about, rather than focusing on those raw scores or comparisons. Really just celebrate when pupils move confidently within their ZPD. They can sustain the reading at the right level of challenge, or even begin selecting appropriate books independently. I've heard examples whereby schools would invite the parents in whenever it was a celebration for a group of students. That was a lovely way to share that. And recognizing the commitment that the parents are giving to supporting their children at home to read within that ZPD range. So we saw there that myON allows us to interact with the book, but it does also allow us to celebrate engagement and reading for pleasure in a meaningful way. If you ever want to find out a little bit more about that, please reach out to us. We'd be more than happy to jump into calls with you and demonstrate and do a bit of a deeper dive into myON. However, I'm just conscious of time as well. So finally, let's celebrate our students' successes beyond the classroom by sharing progress with their families. When we talk to families about progress within a pupil's, their children's ZPDs, reading consistency is a key. Confidence is key. We send a real clear message that reading development is a journey, and we want them to be part of that journey. So keep encouraging them to read at home in any language. It doesn't have to be English. We really want to reinforce that literacy skills transfer, that every step towards, every step towards that counts in their home languages too. So that being said, I just wanted to leave a few minutes at the end. Katrina, it's been amazing to have you demonstrate to us what we can see. Again, we've got some examples on the slides of some proud moments. We have various certificates that we can share, and we will be sharing this recording alongside the PowerPoint for you all to go back and revisit in your own time. Feel free to take this and share it with your teams at school if you are using the program, or if you just want to find out a little bit more about it. However, I'm going to now just pause for a moment, allow you all to just take a minute or so to reflect, potentially ask any questions. So we'll open up the Q&A at this point.
And also there is a poll coming. If you wouldn't mind filling in the poll, just to let us know how you've got on, if there is anything else that we can do to support you. So the poll should be on screen now. Please, if you don't mind, take a couple of minutes just to fill that poll in to give us some feedback. And as Hasna says, if you have got any questions, please do pop them into the chat. We'd love to hear your questions, your thoughts, if there is anything that we can do better. You've seen at the beginning that QR code webinar. I will be hosting that. I will be joined by two schools from your region who will be talking about the success that they've had complete literacy solution. So if you can, please join me for that on the 26th of February.
Actually, and that's a really good point. We do have some additional resources we'd like to share with you. So once you've had a minute or so to complete the poll, we are going to share some links with you. I can see that there is a link in the chat. Thank you so much for our events manager who's popped in there a link to our upcoming webinar. So there are some other additional resources. You can go in and read some success stories, some case studies that have been completed within your region. They give exemplary case studies of what has worked particularly well in schools. So do take some time to click into those as well. So if we can just go to the next slide, please, Katrina. Brilliant. So I'll leave a minute there. So there it is. We've got a link to our website, as well as if you have got any questions later on, you can absolutely email us at international@renaissance.com with the link there for our success stories on the right-hand side. So I can't see any questions at this particular point. If you are a school that is using, as I mentioned, our complete literacy solution or some of our products, reach out to us. We are here to support. And I'll hand over to our lovely Terry.
Thank you, Katrina. Thank you, Hasna. I appreciate you sticking around. We hope you found that session beneficial. Just wanted to apologise for any sort of Teams pop-ups you saw during that recording. We've understand that can be a bit of a nuisance, but thank you very much for sticking around. As Hasna and Katrina have mentioned, we will be sharing the recording and the presentation in due course. If you do have any questions, do reach out, and we hope to see you in a future webinar. Have a lovely rest of your day and hope you enjoy the session. Take care, everybody, and enjoy your day.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Amy.